Hello everyone, welcome to our Let's Play series of Pathfinder Kingmaker. This is Colonel RPG as usual, and I'm very happy that you're chose to join me today as we deal with the Lantern King with a lot of diplomacy. We have been doing diplomacy and also been rambling about things. Oh, I have been rambling about things. Hopefully you haven't been rambling about things, because if you have, you've probably been rambling about me rambling a lot, and I ramble a lot. The blinding light flashes away, frightened like a living creature. The blistering metal of the curse cools. The curse inside me, that's the thing. It still hurts, but the pain is no longer unbearable. You stand before the eldest as before a blazing, living star, and he looks at you as if he's seeing you for the first time.
Good. You can play with words. Let us see if you can withstand the heat of my fire.
I don't know. This is the last battle? I'm paralyzed, for one. What? We can. Just it's a word of warning. Yes, we can withstand the heat of his fire. I can't save. Are we fighting? This is the actual... Lantern King. Armor class of 26. Am I playing on low difficulty, perchance? Oh, yeah. Oh, Colonel, you're such an idiot. You were thinking that the game had been sort of balanced, sort of okay. No, it hasn't been balanced, sort of okay. It's still impossible, and we can't beat the game. Let's see what happens. You... That's not going to stop anytime soon. Few have had the chance to see a star die. Spots of cold, lifeless darkness cover the fiery form of the Lantern King, growing, devouring, and with a dull moan settling onto the ground in a cloud of coal black dust. But a moment later, right where the eldest crown lay burning, another shining image is born. It grows, glowing, turning into a pillar into a familiar silhouette, wearing a crown.
What a refreshing feeling. I don't remember sensing it for dozens of millennia. But what's next? How will you end this story? Listen, I know it would end. Elegant and refined. The hero defeats a deity in battle. Impressive, it grants the victor power and immortality. The hero enters the chambers of the deity to become his champion and herald. Eternal, powerful, equally glorified both in the first world and in Valeria. Her kingdom healed from its wounds and flourished under the rule of the immortal champion. A beautiful ending, isn't it? And this legend is yours for the asking.
Trust the laughing lie. Don't do this. Not after everything you and I have endured because of him. I can give you immortality and power, though not as much as the Lantern Kings. Perhaps we won't be able to stand against the eldest, but... accept my gift and my patronage, and together we will make him pay for what he's done.
She can give me immortality, but not as much immortality as the Lantern King can.
How sad it is to hear you, Nyrissa. Thousands of years for nothing! You haven't learned a single lesson. Never learned to atone. But what do you say?
What about Nyrissa? What will happen to her if I agree to your offer?
What do you think? I can let my misguided protege go wherever she likes. Knowing her, I'm doubtful she will become a humble exile.
I won't. I've come too far to go back. It might take me 1,000 years and thousands of deaths, but I will find a way to get back at you, eldest. Even if she betrays our alliance and becomes your puppet.
What do you suggest, Nyrissa?
I suggest we do not kneel. We are both cursed, you and I. But so what? The curse can harm you only as much as affliction touches your kingdom. But now, with the eldest wounded and bleeding, his henchmen all slain, I can return your state to the material plane. It will heal its wounds, and so will you. I'll create a bond between you and the First World, granting you immortality. Just as the Lantern King promises.
And what role in all this shall I play, Trespasser?
The role of the vanquished. I know you will hardly accept a defeat, Eldest. You may try to attack us again, but we defeated you once. And we will do it again if we must. I'm ready to fight you forever if I have to.
I love that last option right there. What will you ask in return for immortality, Eldest? And what exactly do you offer as a reward, even though you answered the first question and the second question already?
That is easy. I will return your kingdom to Galarian and strengthen its connection to the First World. In their homeland, the Fae can endlessly return to life. I will give to you the same gift. So long as you remain an enclave of the First World, death within its borders will never threaten you. As for the prize, I'm not offering you the position of a servant. Believe it or not, I am lonely. Divine power and immortality are a heavy burden. To accept it means losing all your friends and companions, but you can find allies and provide assistance. This is what I'm looking for, a herald and a general with whom I can share eternity, and together we'll play 1,000 wonderful pranks and spread our power across the First World and further, much further.
That's it. You said pranks. You're dying.
Did I tell you I don't like dying? Well, I don't. Perhaps we should stop this pointless exercise and speak seriously?
I will not bow to you, Eldest. Don't get your hopes up. I misread that as Bones first. Here is my offer. Lift the curse, return my kingdom to Galarian, and forget we exist. And I will forget that you exist. After you speak, silence falls, deep as a chasm. Light pours from the eyes of the Lantern King's mask, still the mask of paternal care, though you do not mistake this for what lies hidden behind it.
So be it. This performance has run its course. It would be unwise to continue it. Besides, I have no love of dying, returning to life. My fellow Eldest are very good at playing especially intricate pranks at that exact moment. You were cursed by my will. By my will, you are now free from the curse. May the shackles be broken, the fetters be loosened. What's been stolen will be returned. What's been divided will be made whole again. I say farewell, and release your kingdom to the material plane. Go, be glad of your ordinary mortal life, and forget the gods of the First World. Now they no longer concern you.
Now that the Eldest and other spiteful beings wouldn't be bothering us, the Queen returned to her subjects and celebrated the victory and the end of the kingdom's miseries with great fanfare. Everything gradually returned to normal, including our exciting lives. Not always peaceful, but also not troubled by invasions from another world. And little by little, our heroes and the common folk began to forget the sorrows of the past. Sometimes, on clear spring nights, the Queen saw dreams. In them, the nymph Nyrissa, fierce and wounded, battled the Jabberwock, died, and returned to life, again and again and again. Under the wise leadership of the Queen, the stolen lands became a true country. There was still much to be done, of course, and some of it will need to be finished by our heroine's descendants. But there are no longer cut purses on every corner, and the peasants aren't afraid some new self-proclaimed chief will show up and strong-arm himself into power.
That sounds terrible.
The stolen lands are called the Land of Popular Rule, for in these lands, common people feel fully in control of their fates. Unfortunately,
So bullshit.
the absence of authority allowed one of the richest regions of the kingdom to proclaim itself an independent republic, and retrieving those territories came at a rather high price for the Queen.
It's just the opposite of what happened before. Also, whatever. It's just the opposite of the previous thing. But also the land of the popular rule, the land that the people, that basically is a monarchy, and my offspring apparently is gonna be the next ruler, and I have such a strong hold on power that people are not even afraid that anything can happen to my power, and it's the popular rule. Sure.
Just half a year after the war with the First World, Galt moved its troops to the southern border of the kingdom. Their attack was rebuffed. The enemy state's infantry could do little against soldiers who were skilled with their swords and knew the military arts better than the alphabet. Since then, Galt hasn't risked crossing any borders again, fearing cruel retaliation for further insolence.
Not state, country is the correct word, or nation.
The Queen's subjects praise her generosity, while citizens of neighboring lands groan from crippling taxes. Citizens of the stolen lands have it pretty good. Truth be told, the treasury isn't always capable of paying the royal bills.
What bills?
And the throne room's adornments are clearly decaying. But sometimes you have to buy the people's love. Literally.
That's not what not taxing them means. That is literally not that. Not paying taxes is not receiving money. Unless, well, actually, well, you know, you could think of, you know, especially with, is it value-added taxes? What's the one? What does VAT stand for? I think it is that. You know, taxes on transactions, basically. And then you give some of that money back to the people, and you're like, it's like you're giving them money, even though you're just, you know, not taking as much as if you would if you didn't give them back. But also the fact that we spend nothing. We don't need to tax them in the first place. There's no spending. We don't have social security. We don't have governmental infrastructure. You don't, like...
No kingdom can function without its nobility, and the kingdom in the stolen lands is no exception. Landowners, ready to share the burden of ruling alongside the queen, grew to be more and more influential over time. And the more pompous the court balls and receptions held by dukes and baronets became, the more eventful were the lives of the schemers and freeloaders who always live within the shadows of the powerful.
This sort of is the opposite of the previous thing a little bit, because it's talking about how pompous the court balls were, and even though they weren't, it also is the opposite of, like, because this is a clear reference to feudalism, which is another reason why the court wouldn't have expenditure or spending, because it's up to the lords to spend the money, and that's how it works in feudalism a lot of the time. Is you don't tax the people as the crown, the lords tax the people, because they are the ones that are doing the spending. That doesn't always happen, and there's countries and there's times in countries where the crown does indeed tax the people and goes beyond the lords, but those it doesn't. Things do get complicated when that happens. The thing that's a little bit more common though is taxing the lords themselves, which of course happens recurrently, because while I say that there's no spending, there's always spending, and the crown must get money from somewhere, and because, you know, they need to eat at the very least, but they also do other things with money, but they don't tax the people in feudalism, which apparently we're living in the rule of the populace is what it was called.
The feud between Brevois North and South, which had been smoldering for ages, finally sparked the fires of civil war. We didn't interfere, watching as the forces of House Sertova and the Sword Lords slaughtered each other. Alternating between brief truces and fresh fights, Brevois was flooded with blood and grew weak. Its leaders could only watch helplessly as their border territories were slowly annexed by neighbors, until they fell to squabbling among themselves. The butchery in Brevois jeopardized the peace of the entire region.
So this is the consequence of me. No, I think this would always happen. We didn't interfere. I don't know what that means, though.
The Tiger Lords never fully recovered from the damage Armont did to the tribe. Lacking a strong leader and torn by infighting, the barbarians sank into a short but fierce internal war. Their lands were quickly appropriated by neighboring tribes, and the Tiger Lords were scattered across Numeria and the River Kingdoms. Little more than pitiful remnants of a once great tribe.
They weren't that great.
Pitax never regained its former stature. In their fight for power, both bandits and the relatively honest merchants lost all their strength, scaring away both customers and suppliers. Trade routes began moving through other cities. Pitax fell into decline, and the citizens quickly forgot all of Iravetti's atrocities, remembering his rule instead as a golden age for the region. Governor Liacenza remembers what the Queen did for him and serves her truthfully and loyally. There was no place for art in the new Pitax. Students and teachers from the academy were scattered to the wind. Some found a place in neighboring courts, while others set off to earn some coin in roadside taverns. A third group, harboring anger and resentment toward the Queen, began weaving revolutionary plots. The ruins of the Academy of the Arts still stand in the middle of the city, overrun with ivy, empty and unwanted. Hargulka, the Troll King, still lives in the Stolen Lands. Amazingly, he managed to bring his savage kin to heel, even organizing trade with nearby settlements of ordinary citizens. The common folk aren't exactly excited to have such neighbors, but they'll settle for trolls who've switched their menu to forest game and the cattle people sell them. After enduring so many storms and troubles, Varnhold eventually turned into a real city. Daring settlers decided to conquer the vast, wild expanses of Dunsword, and despite all odds, they succeeded. The modest colony that almost vanished at the hands of an ancient lich turned everything around to become a thriving city with lively river trading. Agay, the Spriggan leader, learned a valuable lesson after surviving his meeting with the Queen and even regaining his tribe's home. Don't try to occupy seemingly empty settlements anymore. Instead, the Spriggans settled across Dunsword's wild borderlands and proclaimed it as their domain. Keeping the peace in a situation like that seems like the stuff of dreams, as evidenced by the occasional lost patrols and stolen cattle. After the kobolds and mites disappeared, the empty caves beneath the old sycamore quickly became home to all kinds of disgusting critters. Giant centipedes being the most innocent and pleasant of them. Attempts have been made to clear out the caves, but it never takes long for something to take up residence again. In the end, the decision was made to block the entrances and burn the giant tree down, destroying the roots that held up the ceiling of the caves. Oleg's trading post continues to thrive, attracting even more travelers. Much to its owner's displeasure, a small town is springing up around it. Despite Oleg's grumbling, he and his wife are well regarded by everyone, and Svetlana was even elected town chief. Jod remained loyal to the Queen to the end of his days, healing the sick and generously sharing his austere wisdom with anyone who wished to hear it, and some who didn't. Having fulfilled his duty to the ruler, Erastil's priest peacefully departed this world, surrounded by friends and disciples. Tasana, Lamashtu's priestess, didn't remain in the Queen's service for long. One night, she just disappeared from the castle and set off for the kingdom's borders, preaching to anyone who would listen and granting the needy the blessing of the Mother of Monsters. Having participated in Lamashtu's ritual, Owlcat gave birth to a strong and healthy baby. Sadly, the child grew into an unruly and violent adolescent. Having maimed a peer at just 10 years of age, the boy escaped to the Gnarl Marches, fleeing the rage of a mob that tore his mother to pieces instead. No one knows what happened to the lad, but legends of Lamashtu's child, who sometimes kills lost travelers and sometimes leads them to safety, are passed on by word of mouth throughout the area. Breinhardt became a loyal ally and trade partner of the kingdom, and Darwin himself had been seen as a frequent guest in the capital. The elegant monarch of the neighboring kingdom has broken many hearts at court. After his visits, many young guards and servants have been seen staring through windows, sighing wistfully about something. The lizard folk of the Longtail tribe returned to live on the shores of Candlemere, but they couldn't return to their ancient way of life. Living alongside people, the lizard folk adopted their behaviors, habits, and even religion. More and more of the Longtail tribe pray not to the spirits of their ancestors, but to Erastil or Gorum. They even began to forget their original language. I hope someone writes down their songs and legends before they all sink into oblivion.
I understand that it's Lindsay talking and she likes writing and stuff. They probably wrote it already. You just need to ask them for what's written. Like, maybe they wrote it.
The goblins who put so much effort into preserving the Queen's lands obviously felt that gave them the right to do whatever they wanted in the kingdom. Travelers are careful to move in groups when they can, and any peasants who spot at least one particularly toothy stranger immediately raise the alarm. For if you see one goblin, there is likely a whole gang.
Yeah, this is just the normal racism against goblins that the game has. That was very jarring right at the beginning, although it was still the game was still setting up its tone and all that sort of stuff. So the tone here is supposed to be goofy. Oh, isn't it goofy that all goblins are evil and people are super prejudiced against them, and if they see even they think they see the teeth of one, they will raise the alarm and they think they can do whatever they want. No, that's the goofy side of things, which is still pretty weird, but it's what it is. I really tried to push for that, because isn't it fun when goblins, just like that, isn't it fun when goblins, you know, that's honestly one of the appeal of a setting like, for example, I always forget the name. Shadowrun is a setting that has magical creatures that are normally like fantastical. No, well, they're definitely fantastical, but what I mean is, like, normally in fantasy settings, they're usually like evil and they will kill you and eat you, like orcs, or and I'm not talking about half orcs or even goblins. I'm talking like full on orcs, or just spirits and whatnot. And in Shadowrun, you just sort of deal with them, and they can be nice or they can be mean depending on who they are. But they're just normal people, and it's fun because it's like. It's fun. It's just like, oh, I have my friend over here. He's a dragon. He's a dragon. Although dragons in Shadowrun, it's a specific type of lore. But you could have a dragon friend. It's just, he eats people sometimes. But it's just normally people who are willing, or it's complicated. He's a criminal sometimes. Anyway, let's just get past it. It's Shadowrun. A lot of people are criminals in there. Anyway, isn't it fun to have a setting like I tried to put. Goblins and ogres and fays all living together, but the game just doesn't acknowledge that. I think the game just doesn't care about it. Just, they see tooths, they see teeth, but they're bad.
The sweet teeth departed on a journey, hoping to see as many wonders as possible of this world and others. They keep sending us news from every corner of the map. Their bright painted wagon, drawn by a bull mastodon, crisscrosses Galarian, somehow appearing in the center of one incredible story after another. Evindra was glad to see the Lantern King's plans turn to dust. She spent some time helping restore the kingdom after the calamity, then returned home to the First World. They say the rebellious spirit of her cousin Nyrissa awoke within her as well. Evindra is said to recount our story to the Fae, encouraging them to question the power and might of the eldest.
Why is there a CD on top of a elephant in the back? And why is the elephant moving? Don't move! Everything is gonna fall off the shelves and whatnot.
After the victory, the storyteller abandoned his affairs and began spending a lot of time alone in contemplation. He eventually bid farewell to the Queen and left her lands, but I suspect the inhabitants of Galarian haven't heard the last of this mysterious traveler, for his own story is hardly finished. We never saw Amiri again.
We didn't.
Perhaps she got lost somewhere in the First World.
Yes.
Or maybe she found some other way back. Who knows? I doubt that stubborn barbarian would just vanish without a trace.
She did.
As for the Six Bears, they returned to the mountains, out to the farthest, wildest backwoods they could find, and lived there ruled by their primal laws.
I saw a map where there was a place online. I saw a map where it said where we could get Amory. Somehow I never activated that bit, but yeah, she died.
Valerie stayed to serve the queen, but not for long. She soon laid down her weapon to start her own family. Valerie married a simple farmer and bore him 2 beautiful children, then settled away from the capital, where she was soon forgotten. Harem became famous, respected by dwarves throughout our kingdom as well as our neighbors, even as far as the 5 Kings Mountains. He's often been asked to help out or teach others, and he's never denied anyone, despite his grumbling. Some people even listen to his preaching. Lucky for us, there's a lot less howling about the end of the world now, and more wise words of moderation and humility. Not all of his disciples turned to Grotus, but everyone took away something useful from his teachings. Jaethal spent some time at the Queen's court, but it became progressively harder for her to hide her true nature from the omnipresent servants of Pharasma. Realizing the risk,
Omnipresent.
left the kingdom, and she soon sent a message from Geb. In a country populated mainly by undead, Jaethal fit in well, especially with her skills and Urgathoa's blessing. She quickly gained fame and influence there, even gaining the favor of Erasni, the de facto ruler of Geb.
Omnipresent is a word to use there. I will let you think of it what you will.
Octavia didn't stay still for very long. Soon, she and Reg went to Numeria and started a huge slave rebellion there. They didn't manage to destroy the Technic League, but to this day, slaves speak their names with admiration, and slavers with terror. Over the course of their journey, the two grew as close as ever, leaving their quarrels and resentments behind. After returning from Numeria, Octavia settled in her mother's house and became the Queen's advisor and loyal companion.
Why did she stop? Why did she not destroy the Technique League? Why did she return? Like, she's painted as if she went over there, she did some things, and she was like, well, I'm done. Bye. But I'm still a slave. Yeah, too much. It's like, they're still slaves. Go there and kill them all. Not the slaves, obviously. What? Like,
Rigongar left for Numeria with Octavia to start a slave rebellion. Over the journey, he really matured and learned to understand others, as well as how to control his anger. After he returned, he took a position in the Queen's court. Being both formidable and charming, he inspired fear in the hearts of some and lust in others. There are even some rumors that he almost talked Octavia into marrying him, and possibly even continuing the Della Fiorni line. As for Jester Knock Knock, he continued to be a great source of entertainment for the kingdom, both in and out of the throne room, sometimes even on purpose. His antics in the kingdom had an additional effect. Aside from bringing joy and amusement to the citizens, it also softened the common view of goblins. They even became welcome in the streets of the city, for a time. While he may not have become the hero he envisioned, Knock Knock did find himself and his inner strengths thanks to the Queen. If you should ever find yourself in the kingdom, be sure to seek him out. He'll gladly regale you with some new tale of adventure, one that will surely make you smile, whether our foolhardy, clumsy, well-intentioned goblin means to or not. Kalika did not remain in our lands for long. She never lost hope of discovering some news of her sister's fate, and the sorrow in her heart drove her to restless journey. One day, she left without saying goodbye. no one knows where, taking only the simple things she fled with from Kadira. Kanera celebrated the victory along with everyone else, but was soon consumed by black thoughts about her missing sister. One day, we discovered her house empty, her things sold, and Kanera herself gone. All that remained was a short goodbye note.
I thought she had left. I thought she wasn't with us anymore.
Despite all the woes that befell the country, our queen remains a strong leader. Many noble houses from neighboring lands wouldn't hesitate to be related to her, and they regularly send a variety of marriage proposals.
That's such a funny way. I wouldn't hesitate to be related to you, Gilladel. I would love to be your cousin. or your aunt. It's like, what? That's such a weird way of putting it. Oh boy. This is weird.
As for myself, the author of this book, Lindsay, who never chose a pretty nickname, I stayed here, within my own book, to watch what happens in the kingdom and one day write this epilogue. I hope, oh honored reader, that you learned something important from this story, or at least were entertained by it. And now that it's concluded, I have only to set the final period and go silent forever.
Is that the end? It is. And Lindsay dies at the end. Whoa, he doesn't have credits? Well, that's surprising. He doesn't cut to credits. I can click on credits though. And we can... Oh. Wait, what? Is it playing? I'm not sure. I think it is playing. Well, that has been Pathfinder Kingmaker. We have platinum tiers and all the things. So yeah, that's the game. That's the end. I've said all I need to say about this game. Honestly, if you're watching this episode and seeing the ending, and looking for an opinion, then long story short, this game needs to be rebalanced, and the system needs to be completely reworked because it doesn't work in a real-time game. More than not working in a computer game, that also is a concern because you're playing, more than one character, more than a single character, and just things are different because they're a computer game. More than that, they don't work in a real-time game. They need to make it turn-based. And as they make it turn-based and as they rework it, they need to cut 80% of the combat and just make it the combat that exists real memorable, and use the reworked combat to be really nice. Like, I'm not exaggerating. 80% of the combat is superfluous and doesn't need to be there. In terms of dialogue, that's also pretty much the same. This game needs a serious editing pass. Like, the storytelling is super spread out. I cannot... Like, I don't see a thorough line in the storytelling. I hope you learned something from this story, says Lindsay. What story? Just all the enemies that were our enemies were temporary enemies. The main boss was a main boss for 3 episodes, or 5 episodes, however long the Lantern King was a boss for, or as an enemy for. No stakes were held. No consequences to our actions were ever there. It's just, we decided to bring our kingdom to the clouds. Ooh, like, what big deal. From a storytelling perspective, that's a bad thing because, the kingdom is in the clouds. It's sort of bad. But it's not like it affects us. It's just sort of, look at this story that they're telling. And they're telling that story. It's just, there's no stakes. It's not like, I liked the fact that they cursed us, and that was interesting, and it sort of lost a little bit of the effect because at that time I couldn't beat any combat anyway, so it sort of lost a little bit of that effect. But that is the sort of stakes, that curse that we got, and just make it 40% critical misses and all that sort of stuff. That curse is the fun bits. That's what the game should have done, and it should have done more of that. It should have made us angry or want to deal with the enemies that we are dealing with. And when I say the enemies, I mean every single enemy. And it needs to have a way fewer enemies. Just like it doesn't need the Lantern King, because the Lantern King, either he's the enemy from the beginning or he doesn't. That's just a weird thing. It's like, oh, but there's a real end boss that you weren't expecting. Nyrisa, I suppose, works. Because Nyrisa was our enemy for a while, but she needed to be a lot a much bigger aspect of our life. Her actions needed to be a much bigger aspect of our life, but as well her character needed to be. And I think she has space to be a much bigger character in our life. It's just everybody else needs to stop being taking place, and that's why 80% of the dialogue needs to be cut. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Like, every single dialogue that is related to our kingdom management needs to be turned into a menu. It cannot be, it takes so long for you to go through those dialogues, and they're overly verbose as they are. So even if they were made to be like compact and as normal people talk, they would still take a lot of time, and they would still scatter your attention as a player away from the main plot. So you just lose track of what you're doing, or not track of what you're doing, but you wouldn't lose, like, you don't forget Nyrisa. Although there are some characters that you forget. That's not the problem. That's not the real problem. The real problem is that they lose importance. And you just sort of, like, I said it a while back now. Nyrisa is a side character. Everybody's a side character in this game, because there are so many side characters. And there's characters that show up so often, and others that never show up. Like, for example, Balkan shows up so often, because it's always giving me crap. And, like, I know Balkan, but I don't know the other guy that died because he was dumb, basically, because I said, don't go there, and he said, oh, I will, and then apparently it was my fault, or something like that. You know, that one that shows up as a ghost in the end? That sort of stuff needs to be set up, and the game needs to be built and written to set those things up so that they make sense, so that they're impactful. So it's like, I don't know, I don't know. It's not like this game doesn't have a publisher, because usually the editing can be done by the publisher, and well, it depends on how companies work. But it's like nobody had oversight over the writers. It's like the writers decide, I'm going to write a bunch of things, and I like, sure, I'm sure it's very well written like, it feels like it's very well written in Russian, but, like, sure, for sure, absolutely, go ahead. But you need to cut that stuff down. Like, it just scatters the game all over the place, and I can't imagine that it was just simply taken from the tabletop rule set. I can't imagine that it was done just, oh, look at all this text that exists already in the tabletop rule set. Let's just turn it into dialogues and everything works well. I don't think that's what happened. I think they just wrote things. Either as, maybe they wrote too many things because it's a nice marketing pitch where you say, oh, look at our game has 1 million words. And it's like No Man's Sky saying, oh, our game is the size of the universe, and people are like, oh, that must be really good. No, that must be really bad. The bigger the game, the worse it is in general, because can you imagine exploring the universe? I would die. And so it's just it's not that it's bad because it's big. It's just that that's not why it's good or why it's bad. To be fair, having a lot of words is not why it's good and why it's bad. And if you want to look at a game that has a lot of words. Actually, 2 games. Let's just go with 2 games that have a lot of words and that use their words effectively. Look at Sunless Skies and also Fallen London. Not Fall. Well, I've never played Fallen London, but the one that came before Sunless Skies, Sunless Seas. Look at those 2 games. Sunless Skies, I know, has 800,000 words, and it took me 50 hours to finish, and I didn't see even 40% of those words. And I had a huge blast with the dialogue, because it's concise. It's like there's a lot of hints, but it's also like you get the point of the game. The point of the game is to send you on little adventures, and it doesn't pretend to be a grand adventure at the end where Nyrisa wasn't the real boss after all, and there was this king that was pompous and idiotic. It's not like that. And another game like that has a huge amount of words, although not 800,000, it's only 500,000. It's Pathfinder Kingmaker. No, sorry, I'm reading Pathfinder Kingmaker. No, it is Torment Tides of Numenera. That game is a lot of words, and it's basically all dialogue, and it works very well in terms of how edited it is. There's a time in the game that it sort of scatters, because you sort of get lost, and it's just how the storytelling goes. But you always know what you're trying to do. Everything revolves around the main storyline, and there's a bunch of side quests that take a long time as well. The side quests there are long, and they have a lot of dialogue. And you also don't get to see, like, even probably see half of the dialogue or half of the written words by the time you are done with the game, because a lot of them just don't show up because they're related to other options that you didn't take, and it took some options instead of others. You know what I mean? So what this game needs is just a serious editing pass. It does not need to be this big, and the kingdom management needs to be better. No, it is really fun, and that's why it needs to be better. It was one of those cases, or one of those things that, like, if they made... Like, this game is fun in a lot of aspects, but for me, the most fun I've had was the kingdom management. I had a lot of fun with the kingdom management, and so enough fun that I'm like, oh, but this could be so much better. Like, in terms of, like, wouldn't it be fun if you just put houses down and stuff like that? I like that sort of stuff. And the game could have room for that. It doesn't have room for that now, but it could have room for that if it actually cut down on the fluff. Like... It'd be, think of, I've never finished Fallout 4, but think of Fallout 4. It has all that town management, and it works well, I'm told. It works well if you like the town management, because first off, it's optional, but it's also like a break from the rest of the game. So you're going around looting and shooting and doing side quests, and they're edited down, they're concise, it's Bethesda writing, you know how it is. They usually don't go about dialogues that are enormous and take forever. But it works because it's different enough that you can choose to focus on one thing or the other depending on what you feel like doing, and that feels so nice, I think. And it feels it feels really nice. We spent easily 10 full episodes here in this Let's Play just dealing with kingdom management, and I had a lot of fun with that. And I also had a lot of fun because I ramble about all the things. And in fact, this ramble was supposed to be a long story short, so I've made it enormous already. That's what wait, let's not go with that. But yeah, that's I'm really glad I got to play this game, but there's a lot of flaws here, and it's a very long game, and I like games with flaws. And honestly, I can't say I dislike this game because of the flaws, because I don't. I don't dislike this game because of the flaws. I like this game for everything, everything including the flaws, except for the balancing. The balancing just breaks the game. The game is effectively broken. I'm sure you can finish it, but like, I could finish it as well. I mean, I beat Fallout. No, I didn't beat Fallout. I beat Fallout, but I beat Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and the expansion almost. Didn't finish the last boss with a single character. Like, I can beat anything if I put my mind to it. And also if I get some help from the chat, because I'm doing it live. But let's not get into that. The thing is, I can get there. I'm not the best strategician. I definitely am not. But I can do it. It's such an enormous effort. And you just need to respect and know things from the beginning so much, so well. And you need to spend time grinding. I'm pretty sure we were under-leveled. And you can grind if you just get random encounters, I'm sure. And you need to get the right weapons, you need to get the right amount of money. And it is not balanced. And I don't know why they balanced it like this. I don't understand. And it's not like my opinion is it's not like I'm alone in saying this. A lot of people say this. And have said this to me in the comments since the beginning of the Let's Play. And it just took me a while to figure it out. To see it. Not really to figure it out, because it wasn't broken for a long while. It just was broken at the end. And usually it's like, basically you get paralyzed and you're done. And that's it. But I think it's also the systems. The game needs to be turn-based. Every game like this needs to be turn-based, so that it just allows you to have better combat. That's it. Because a real-time with pause game needs to have filler combat. It needs to have trash mobs that you spend a little bit of time and they just wear you down a little bit, wear your team down in the battle, and so you reach the boss and you're like, oh, it's a big fight. But a turn-based combat game doesn't even have to have fights before the boss, because just go play Torment Tides of Numenera, and it works perfectly well. You can even talk to the bosses. You can initiate dialogue during combat. There's so many inventive ideas in that game, honestly. It doesn't execute them all perfectly, but far from it, and also it's buggy a little bit, but it's just turn-based. Turn-based everything, please. But that was Pathfinder Kingmaker. I'm very thankful that you stood with me until the end. I really am. I really do mean it. I say it every time, and I mean it. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you have enjoyed it through the good and through the bad. Hopefully there was good in there, and if you did, Or, I mean, if you didn't, but hopefully I'll see you in another Let's Play. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.